Okay, here we go with the last chapter of Adam of the Road, Loud Sing Cuckoo. April came. The barley pricked through the earth, spreading a yellowish-green veil over the fields that Adam had helped to plow. Primroses were budding. The first swallow dipped and swooped across the sky. Adam said goodbye regretfully to Wat and Gunilda, Robin and Dickon and the oxen, and to all his friends in the village. They were sorry to see him go, for they had never before had a minstrel of their own, and they would miss the gaiety he brought them. But they were proud, too, that they sent him away clothed in bright colors as a minstrel should be, with leather shoes on his feet, a bagpipe under his arm, and his dog at his heels. Late in the afternoon he walked across the water meadows toward the walled city of Oxford. The sun was in his eyes as he came, and long shadows stretched toward him. A score of towers and spires behind the gray wall were touched with gold and purple, and on the fresh, earth-fragrant air the bells shook out silver melody. Adam soon found that though Oxford, from the outside, looked like an enchanted city filled with meditative peace, inside it was so full of hurry and noise and people and confusion that it seemed as if the walls must fly apart from the pressure of it. There were almost as many church spires as there had been at Winchester, and a castle loomed up, massive and threatening, on its mound. There were inns and houses and shops, some fine, some mean, all jammed together, and more people on the street. Adam thought than could ever be packed under the available roofs. 3 times before he was fairly in the city, he was jostled by hurrying people who seemed not even to see him. He tightened Nick's leash and walked slowly up the street, turning his head this way and that, trying to see everything at once. He saw white friars and gray friars. He saw monks in their dark robes, students with eager faces and shabby gowns, an herbalist crying his herbs and promising miraculous cures for all ills, from sore throat to love sickness, a carter with a load of timber, a countryman with a pig under his arm, a merchant in a long fur-trimmed purple mantle, an archer with a crossbow. There was no end, it seemed, to the hustling crowd. At the crossroads in the center of the city, he was suddenly shoved against the wall as people pressed back to let a man have free passage. Adam stood on tiptoe to see who it was. He was running in the direction of the castle, and he wore a badge with the king's gold leopards and carried a spear. His face, Adam could see, was set and strained, and he lifted his feet as if they were heavy. The crowd closed in behind him, and Adam had room to move again. "Who was that?" he asked curiously of a student who was beside him. "King's messenger," answered the young man carelessly. "He does better with his feet than most of us poor scholars will ever do with our heads. He gets 3 pence a day on the road and an allowance for shoes beside." "I bet he needs the shoes," said Adam feelingly. "What was his message about, do you suppose?" The scholar shrugged. "How should I know?" "Do you think the fighting is over in Wales?" The scholar had gone, and he got no answer. He found someone else to ask where Merton College was. The parson at Ewelme had got Perkin a place there as one of the incorporated scholars. "Go past All Saints' Church and past St. Mary's, that's the second one, and turn down the lane the right till you come almost to the city wall." It was a fine place, he thought, when he saw it. Perkin had come to live and study in. There were several buildings, a smallish one with a steep stone roof, a long low one, a half-finished chapel with scaffolding over it, a kitchen, if Adam's nose was any judge, and a hall with a great oak door all banded and barred with fine ironwork. While he stood there, shivering in the shadows, gone suddenly chilly, the hall door swung open, and he had a glimpse of long tables inside and people moving about in candlelight. Still holding Nick on the shortened leash, he climbed the stone steps and asked the first person he met for Perkin Watson. The boy turned and bellowed into the long room. "Perkin!" Perkin was new at Merton, and young besides, but he was not shy. He hailed Adam with joy, admired his new clothes, patted Nick, and dragged them into the hall, announcing loudly, "Here's a minstrel!" Some went on with what they were doing. 1 or 2 lifted an eyebrow as they went on, but several gathered around Adam. "How good are you?" asked one flatly. "Listen, and you can judge for yourself," answered Adam promptly. He sang the cuckoo song, and they listened. He sang his own song about being a minstrel, and 2 more added themselves to the circle. When he sang, "My love is to the greenwood gone," they joined in, and finally they all broke into Gaudeamus igitur and drowned Adam out. The lusty song that students were singing all over Europe, urging one another to rejoice while they were young, for after youth and after age comes the grave, swelled out and filled the hall and died away. Before a new song could be started, one of the scholars, who was older than the rest, jumped off the table where he had been perching and said to Adam, "You've got a rare voice. Stay and have some supper with us." "He's one of the seniors who govern the college," Perkin whispered. Supper came in before long, and Adam was glad. It was preceded and followed by a long Latin grace, rattled off by one of the scholars so fast that Adam could not separate one word from another. "That was pretty good time," Perkin told him. "They try to see who can do it the fastest." Adam shared his supper with Nick, handing bits down under the table to him from time to time. The talk at the table was all of the king's messenger. "The king has called a parliament at Westminster," said the senior, whom Adam thought of as his friend. "Is that all?" commented a round-faced boy, breaking his bread to dip in his cup of ale. Adam remembered the talk about Parliament in the strangers' hall at Winchester. "Who goes to parliaments?" he said indignantly. "The big churchmen and the nobles? Do the common people go?" "They do not." The senior pointed a long finger at him. "That's just where you're wrong, my young rooster," he said. "This one is different. For the first time the commons are going to the Parliament. 2 citizens or burgesses from every city and borough town. The warden was with the sheriff of Oxfordshire when the message came, and he saw it. That which concerns all, says King Edward, should be approved by all. And that, my fellow scholars, if you could but see beyond the black letters in the books you bury your long noses in, is more important than any examinations you may or may not be passing." His fellow scholars, whose noses were of varying lengths, united in a groan. "He's off again." Adam's mind went back to the old gaffer at Burford Bridge. What was it he had said about great things happening before people's eyes, and they not seeing anything out of the ordinary? Perhaps the messenger that Adam had seen today was one like that. He sat dreaming till Perkin nudged him to go on with his meal. After supper, Perkin showed Adam over the college. "Here's where we sleep," he said when they came into the long, low building that Adam had noticed earlier. It was a big dormitory, rather like the one at school, but with corners partitioned off to serve as studies. "That's my bed there. You can sleep with me tonight. Look out of the window." Through the narrow window they saw the meadows beyond the city wall shining in the moonlight. "See that tower over there near the bridge?" said Perkin. "That's Friar Bacon's study." "Who's he?" said Adam, unimpressed. "He's a very learned friar. Some say he's a magician, Friar Bacon says," went on Perkin, while they rested their elbows on the windowsill, side by side, and leaned out. "That there are 4 grounds of human ignorance. 1 is the placing of confidence in the opinion of the inexperienced. That is to say," he explained, bumping himself against Adam, "if I place confidence in your opinion, that would be a cause of my ignorance. And another is the hiding of one's lack of knowledge with a parade of superficial wisdom, which might be a cause of your ignorance." He stopped. "And what?" said Adam calmly, hooking his ankle suddenly around Perkins and almost bringing him to the floor, "are the 2 other causes of human ignorance?" "Those," said Perkins simply, "I have forgot." "Ho!" cried Adam. "A scholar's life is easy. If a minstrel forgets, he doesn't get any dinner." "That gives me an idea," said Perkin. "We'd better go to bed now, before anybody turns you out." It was a tight squeeze in the narrow bed, and Adam was nervous anyhow, not being at all certain that the college authorities would want him to be there if they knew. When he did go to sleep, he dreamed that the warden came, and with a thundering voice ordered the senior to throw him out of the window. He was relieved when morning came and they rolled out early before the other sleepers in the room were stirring. "You know what?" said Perkin, while they were drawing water from the well to wash in. "I think you ought to stay here. There are some poor boys who aren't ready for the university yet that they keep here and teach, and when there's a vacancy among the scholars they move up the head poor boy. A scholar gets lodging and teaching and clothes and pocket money all the time he's studying. I should think they might take you. You've got more brains than half of these lumps. It wouldn't hurt to ask." Adam remembered the Abbot's steward at Watlington and the message he had told Adam to give the warden of Merton, but he shook his head. "I don't want to be a clerk," he said. "I'm a minstrel. Listen." High overhead a bird went flying. "Cuckoo!" it called. "Cuckoo!" The first cuckoo. Now spring had really come. The quadrangle suddenly looked different. The grass seemed greener, and the primroses beside the gate had burst into bloom during the night. Over the steep roof of the little Treasury building a beech tree showed a tracery of tiny green leaves against the sky. Everything sparkled in the early sunshine, and the air smelled of spring. "Cuckoo!" came the call again, more faintly. "It's time for me to go to Ludlow," said Adam. Perkin begged him to stay and go to morning lecture with him, promising that afterward he would walk out beyond the north gate and say goodbye there. Adam agreed. He was sorry to leave Perkin. There was no one except Roger with whom he liked so much to be. The lecture, which was all in Latin, was given in the hall. Adam was heartily sick of it long before it was finished. After all, he thought, squirming and sighing, he hadn't much time to spare. He was still more impatient when, just as he and Perkin got out into Merton Lane, a boy came running after them with word that the warden wanted to see them. "Me?" said Perkin, turning pale. "Both of you." "Maybe," worried Adam, "I oughtn't to have stayed with you last night." At the best, it would mean delay. At the worst, he did not know what fearful academic penalties there might be. He was tempted to make a run for freedom, but he knew he could not leave Perkin to face alone whatever it might be. They turned in silence and went back across the quadrangle to the warden's lodging. "Come in," a voice answered with a knock. Adam opened the door. There were 2 men in the paneled room, but he saw only one. "Roger!" he shouted. Roger, in his striped silk surcoat, came striding toward him. Before the warden and Perkin, they merely shook hands. But in that instant, Adam noticed that Roger had a fine pair of embroidered gloves, and that he took off the right one to shake hands with Adam as if he had been a nobleman. Roger's hand was warm and strong, and Adam clung to it, too happy to speak. I'll show you the picture in my book. It's finally Adam, sorry I can't point, finally has Nick and Roger back. "How did you know he was here?" burst out Perkin. "I got to Ludlow earlier than expected," replied Roger, "and the steward of the Abbey of Bec was there holding court. He told me that he had met you and that he had sent you to the warden of Merton. So I came here to find you. The good warden said the abbot's steward spoke well of you, Adam, and you may have a place here if you wish. Would you like that?" "No, thank you," said Adam steadily. "I am a minstrel. I want to be on the road with you." "I thought you would," said Roger. He went on talking to give Adam time to recover from his surprise. "I gave Hugh the war horse." "That's great. Remember how Hugh really wanted Bayard?" "And he said to tell you that he will lend him to you when you return. Simon is a knight now, and he has put away childish things. He sent you his silver flute, which is a fine thing for a young minstrel. Marjorie told me to be sure to bring you back to sing to her." He looked down at Adam, who stood happy and sturdy and tall in his home-made blue and red, with his dog at his side and a bagpipe under his arm. Roger's mouth twitched at the corners, but his gray eyes deep under his square brow were tender. "You have done well, son," he said. And that is the end of Adam of the Road.